We've already seen a couple of great explanations of Epictetus that really focus on the practical lessons here. Living Stoicism. And again, this text just seems immediately more practical than the things we've been reading. This is not just about how to know things, this is about how to be happy. This is about how to live your life. But that said, in between the cracks here, I wonder if the focus on philosophy hasn't been lost a little bit. In other words, I think maybe you'd read this book and you think, okay, this is great practical advice, but is this still philosophy? And certainly Epictetus keeps using this word philosopher and philosophy, but I think it's worth paying attention to what he means by it. There's interwoven with the idea about how we should live our life is a conception of philosophy, what it means to be a philosopher, and what philosophy is for. And I want to wrap things up by really paying attention to that, thinking about the conception of philosophy that we find in this text. So I want to start with section 29 of the Enchiridion, which in your books at least is on page 345. So if you look at section 29, you'll see that it's really two big paragraphs, and each of these paragraphs is doing something interesting, and then when we put them together, I think we get an interesting idea. So let's just start with that first paragraph. Section 29 begins, "For each action consider what leads up to it and what follows it, and approach it in light of that. Otherwise, you will not come to it enthusiastically at first, since you have not borne in mind any of what will happen next. But later, when difficulties turn up, you will give up disgracefully." And Epictetus' example here is of an athlete, and thinking about the various things that you would have to do as an athlete if you want to be successful at the Olympic Games. You want to win Olympic gold? Well, let's think about what that entails. So already it's a matter of thinking about what it means to really commit to something. If you want to be a successful athlete, what does that entail? Well, certainly that entails training and committing to training, right? Training, real serious training, is not just fun. It is hard work. You have to get up early. You have to really give it your all. You're going to be exhausted. It is painful. But second of all, think about all of the other things that have to happen in order for you to really commit to that training regimen. We are talking about you're going to have to go to bed earlier so that you get enough sleep. You're going to have to start to eat right. You can't just eat junk food or drink beer whenever you want, not if you want to really keep your body in shape. You're going to have to change your social routine. You can't be spending all that time with your friends if you're going to have to be in the gym or out on the ice rink or in the gymnasium or wherever it is that you're practicing. You're going to have to make some sacrifices elsewhere in life, in other words, in order to put the emphasis on that training. And so you put all of that in, and if you think about that up front, how many of us think, oh, it would be great to do this, and then once we start, we find, oh, well, this is harder than I thought it would be, this is less fun than I thought it would be. How many times have I thought, oh, I want to learn how to play the guitar, but learning how to play the guitar is not just immediately shredding. There's all of that learning scales and practicing, and your fingers hurt, and it's kind of boring, and or learning a language, right? Oh, it would be great to learn Japanese, but yeah, it's not just watching Japanese cartoons and singing along. It's a matter of there's all that vocabulary and grammar and the alphabet, and it's just so. This first paragraph continues, think about all of that, and then undertake training if you still want to. Otherwise, you will be behaving the way children do, who play wrestlers at one time, then act a play. In this way, you are now an athlete, now a gladiator, then an orator, then a philosopher, yet you are nothing wholeheartedly. But like a monkey, you mimic each sight that you see, and one thing after another is to your taste, since you do not undertake a thing after considering it from every side, but only randomly and half-heartedly. And so what we get at the end of this first paragraph is this distinction between people and what Epictetus refers to as children or monkeys, right? Children or monkeys, they see something and they want to imitate it and they want to jump in, and that's fun for a little while, right? And anything can be fun for a little while, and then when it gets to be work, it's not fun anymore. And so they just want to drop it and they don't want to do it anymore. He says human beings, to be a person is to do something with your whole soul, and that's to really commit to it. I'm not just going to do it when it's fun. I'm going to make myself keep working at it even when it stops being fun. And so part of really being an adult, being a human for Epictetus, is just figuring out what it is that you're willing to commit yourself to, what it is that you're really going to mean and follow through on. And part of growing up is then a matter of just figuring out what you are willing to keep working hard at, even when it stops being fun. And so much of childhood and our teen years are a matter of just playing around and doing stuff when it's fun and then kind of moving on. So what is it that you're really going to follow through on? But now with that distinction made in the first paragraph, we've got a distinction between people on the one hand and children or monkeys, people who don't do anything with their whole soul. And so within this first category of people, now the second paragraph is going to make a further distinction. And I want you to pay attention to that distinction here. Let's take a look at that second paragraph. The second paragraph ends, "You must be one person, either good or bad. You must either work on your ruling principle or work on externals. Practice the art of either what is inside or what is outside. That is, play the role either of a philosopher or of a non-philosopher." And so you must be one person, Epictetus says, either good or bad. Now, what's going on there? Because after all, hasn't the big lesson of this book so far been that nothing is bad unless I decide it's bad? I think it's bad. So how can he now call a whole group of people bad? What would it mean for those people to be bad? Well, I want you to pay attention to the full category list here. The philosopher, whom Epictetus calls the good, works on ruling principles, practices the art of what is inside. The non-philosopher is what Epictetus calls bad. They work on externals and practice the art of what is outside. In order to be successful in the world, in order to set out to be and commit yourself to being successful in the world, what does it take? First of all, it takes really committing to do it, right? And so we said, if you're going to be an athlete or a musician, all of that practice, even when it's boring, even when it's hard, even when it hurts, you've got to keep going. What makes someone like that keep going? It seems to me that in order to really keep going and push through when it's not fun anymore, you've got to have a passion. You've got to have a drive. Where does that come from? Where that comes from is unleashing a desire for something out there in the world, right? Epictetus points out, in order to be successful, you've got to commit yourself to conquering something outside of you. Conquering politics if you're going to be a politician, conquering fame and mastery of your craft if you're going to be a musician, conquering your sport or your body if you're an athlete, conquering, etc., 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 right? Whatever it is you're going to commit yourself to, you're looking to accomplish something in the world. Now, what does it take to be successful out there in the world? Certainly, it requires us to really commit and master ourselves, right? But at the end of the day, is that enough? In other words, you do everything you're supposed to do. You've got the right diet, you've got the right exercise, you found the right trainer, you are functioning to the peak of your ability. Does that mean you're going to win a gold medal at the Olympics? Does that mean you're going to be first round draft pick? No. And why not? Well, because in order for those things to happen, it's not just you functioning to the peak of your potential. You also have to be better than all the other people out there who want it just as badly as you do. Now, how do I make sure that I am better than all those other people? Here is the important point. I can't make sure of that. In order to be better than those other people out there, those other people out there have to be worse than me. And I can't control how good they are. I can't control what they do or how hard they practice. I can't control who's born. It just seems to me that if you're born into an era where no one else happens to be faster than you, you can be the fastest man alive. You have the misfortune of being born in the same era as Usain Bolt, though. Good luck with that, right? You can be just as fast. One period of history you do just fine, and the other period of history, all of a sudden you're second best, right? And so, what does it require in order to be successful in the world? Not just mastery of yourself and mastery of your craft. It also requires good fortune. It also requires luck. And at the end of the day, luck is not up to you. And so Epictetus' point here is, if you commit yourself to conquering what is outside of you, at the end of the day, your success is ultimately down to luck. It's down to good fortune. Now, that does not mean that the vulgar will never be successful, right? Some people really are lucky, and that's great. But at the end of the day, your success is not yours. Your success is not up to you. You say, but I worked for that. I worked my ass off for that. Sure, yes, you did. But luck ultimately then handed you that victory for working your ass off instead of handing someone else that victory for them working their ass off. By contrast, the philosopher works to conquer what is within. The philosopher works to conquer him or herself. And that, as Epictetus has tried to show us through this whole book, is ultimately up to you. No one and nothing can stop you from being successful if you really want it, if you really commit yourself to it. And that's why Epictetus calls these people the good and the vulgar or the non-philosophers the bad. It's not good and bad in the moral sense. It's not good people and wicked people. It's just a matter of, is your happiness up to you? Are you the one making you happy? Are you the one making yourself good? If I am the cause of my own happiness and my own goodness, I'm a philosopher. If good fortune is the cause of my goodness and my happiness, I'm one of the vulgar. That's the bad, right? I'm bad because the good is coming from without me. I'm the good if the good is mine, truly mine, coming from within. Section 5 points out that an uneducated person blames his own misfortune on what's external, on someone other than himself, right? And so certainly that's a matter of I mess up and then I blame someone else. Obviously that's a moral failing. But take this more seriously here, right? If I am in pain and I blame my bad condition on someone else, that's only because I have decided that being in pain is bad. Now you say, well, of course being in pain is bad. But no, not necessarily, right? Notice there are times where you choose to seek out pain. I'm thinking about things like if you've decided to do sit-ups, for example. But also, imagine I come to you and for whatever reason I say, I need you to punch me in the nose. Please, will you punch me? Do me this favor and punch me in the nose. And you don't feel good about this at all. But if I really do want this, if I really do need this as a favor, for whatever reason, then when you punch me in the nose, I don't blame you, I thank you. It's just like if you bake me cookies, right? If you've done something that I think is good, then I thank you. If I'm on a diet, or if I'm diabetic, or if I'm trying to avoid cookies, I will blame you. Oh, why did you do this, right? So Epictetus says someone starting education, someone starting instruction, will put the blame on themselves. I now realize that if I'm in a bad situation, it's only because I've decided my situation is bad. I now realize that if I'm in a good situation, it's only because I've decided my situation is good. Now I'm starting instruction, I am still thinking of my situation as good or bad, but at least now I know I should blame myself when I'm in a bad situation. But that's of course why the fully instructed person, the philosopher, does not put the blame on anyone. The philosopher doesn't put the blame on anyone because there's nothing to blame for. I'm never in a bad situation because I never regard my situation as bad. And if I'm never in a bad situation, then what is there to blame? I'm simply in a situation. I think we can helpfully compare this to the way Machiavelli looks at things. If you're familiar with Machiavelli, the early modern Italian philosopher, you'll know Machiavelli from his theories about power and manipulation. Machiavellian is an adjective these days, meaning sort of manipulative or power hungry. But Machiavelli, if you go back to his writing, The Prince, he'll say that what we need in order to be successful, the good prince for Machiavelli, really deals with two things. They are what Machiavelli calls virtu and fortuna. Virtu, the Latin word for virtue, is cultivating mastery of yourself. And Machiavelli says if you really want to be successful, what you're going to do is cultivate that mastery of yourself. You need to live up to your potential. You need to be functioning at peak capacity. You need to be ready for opportunities when they come along. But of course, Machiavelli says fortuna are those opportunities that come along, fortune. And so for Machiavelli, it's a matter of mastering myself so that when the right opportunity comes along, I am prepared to take advantage of it. Fortune is the external condition. It's what you cannot control, and as he will say in The Prince, when fortune turns against you, you either have to change your approach or you will be unsuccessful. Meanwhile, however, virtue is this thing that you cultivate inside of yourself, self-mastery, so that when the circumstances are right, you are prepared to take advantage of them. Someone unprepared, someone who has not properly trained themselves, is going to waste good opportunities simply because they cannot take advantage of those good opportunities when they arise. But this is to say, for Machiavelli, these two things go together. Success in the world is associated with, comes along with internal success, mastering myself. I do the one so that I can have the other. Epictetus, by contrast, is going to say you have to pick between them. It's either mastering yourself or mastering the world. You can either focus on what's within or focus on what's without. Now, why can you only do one? Well, in order to be successful in the world, as we've said, I'm going to have to unleash my passion, unleash my desire, really go out and want it. Whereas conquering myself, he says, conquering what's within requires me to master that desire, to master that passion, to push it down, to eliminate it, to make sure that I don't want anything other than what happens. And so I'm either unleashing that passion and desire or I am conquering it. I can't do both. You can't let something free and keep it under your control. Those are exclusive options. And so this is why for Epictetus, it's not going to be a matter of conquering the world by conquering yourself. It's going to be a choice between the two. And again, you can only do one of those with your whole soul. In order to be a full human being, you've got to pick. You've either got to be a philosopher or a non-philosopher. And so again, what this means is that being a philosopher for Epictetus is this cultivation of what's inside. Being a philosopher is not a matter of going out to philosophy schools and gathering students and teaching them to pursue wisdom. Being a philosopher is a matter of mastering yourself, going back into the world, and living just like everybody else does. And that, of course, is what makes Stoicism so attractive as a philosophy for everybody. Not just people who want to be philosophy majors or philosophy professors, but people who want to just live every day and be happy and successful. Successful by Stoic definitions, but successful in some sense.